Processes and tools dominate today's Agile discussions, but we are devoted to the individuals and interactions that make it work. From the beginner to the veteran practitioner, we have something for you. Welcome to Agile for Humans.
All right, welcome to this week's episode of Agile for Humans. I'm your host, Ryan Ripley. Joining me is a massive crowd of people. So we are at the Agile Coaching Summit in Chicago, hosted at Uptake, and this is a session during one of the open space spots where I decided to let's just record. And so I don't have a topic since it's open space. I'm not showing up with any preconceived notions. We've had a lot of great discussion. So what I'm curious about is who is going to get us going. And when you speak, please say your name so that I can remember to put you in the show notes, and we'll make sure we get your Twitter handle, your website, all of those things captured. So who's up?
I'm Kat Doherty, and I was wondering about sort of how you came into the personal branding you have around your Agile journey and how you move your voice forward, so like the blogging and the no estimates, and also your shirt size.
All right, so the question is really, how do you get started?
How did you even select your personal brand, or what it was you were going to be, the guy who knows this about Agile? Like, how did you even find that, and then how did you deliver it?
You know, I wish there was like this great like heroic starting story, like the origin story like they have in the comic books. You know, Spider-Man was bit by a spider and became a hero or whatever, but it was all a lot of it was random and accidental. So this podcast, for instance, started because Don Gray, Esther Derby, Aaron Kopel, a few of us would get together every once in a while. We had a coaching group, and we'd just get on Skype and talk, right? So sometimes coaches or scrum masters, we need therapy. Things are going on and we just need to vent. We need someone to talk to. We need a support group. And that's what this was. And one day Don Gray said, "Hey Ryan, you should record this and publish it. People might like it." And I'm like, "You're crazy. We're just on here talking and no big deal." But we decided to publish it. The hardest part was naming it. It's like, what do you call an Agile podcast? Because, you know, This Agile Life is already out there, so John Sextro does that. The Metacast was a great name, but Bob Galen and Josh Anderson have that. You know, there's already some great names taken. You know, Joe Krebs out of New York has Agile.fm. Like, that's what we looked at first. And then finally we said, well, what's going on in the Agile community right now? So there's a lot of tools, and there's a lot of a lot of Jira, a lot of rally talk going on. But it's a human thing, right? The manifesto is an exploration of making humans, people, amazing, and helping to. It's all about empowerment. It's all those things those soft things that we talk about sometimes. So Agile is really for human beings, and so we shortened it a bit. We said, how about just Agile for Humans as a way to counterbalance the whole tool trend, and so that stuck. The first time we published it, you know, I thought 10 people would maybe my mom would download it out of pity, right? But she didn't, by the way. She does not listen. But yeah, it's very supportive, but just not her thing, right?
Right.
But the first episode went out, and instantly we had 300 people download it. I thought, wow, this was unexpected. And so then Don started tweeting it out, and Aaron started tweeting it out, and suddenly the numbers they still are growing.
How long ago?
2 years. So it's been a 2-year journey of figuring out how to do all this. We've had some really wonderful guests. You know, when you can pull people like Esther Derby onto the show, and then she has a positive experience and she starts talking about it, that's very helpful. You know, we've talked to Woody Zuhl, Jerry Weinberg. I mean, pretty much the A-list of our community has come on at some point or another, with a few exceptions that we're working on. And they just say really great things. And so my brand, like you asked what my approach was, you know, that's how the podcast popped up. I try to minimize my role on the podcast. So I edit, so I'll ask a lot of questions, we'll have a lot of conversation, but then I edit myself out of it. So my goal, or my personal why of the podcast, is that I love my friends and I want them to be wildly successful. And so what that means is that I minimize myself out of it. And so what happens is it's a very excellent experience for the guests, and it's a wonderful conversation that I think it resonates with people because it's just people getting on there and talking. There's not one person trying to be famous. There's not one person trying to be overpowering. It's just a bunch of peers and friends and people who truly enjoy each other's company having a conversation. And so that's what we've tried to keep it at, and that's how we've defined that brand. Does that answer it? With the blogging, I think with any blogger, you go to WordPress, you set up a site, and the hardest part is getting over that inner critic, like, I don't have anything interesting to say, and so you type. But it's like, no, some people read this, and you just, for the biggest myth, so let me tackle it this way. Everyone's like, oh, you have a ton of downloads, you have a ton of readership, it just happened overnight. And the answer is no. So the podcast is almost 3 years old, and it's in its third year where the download numbers have really gotten interesting, right? So it's 3 years of, slugging through, and it's hard to actually put together an hour-long episode, edit it, show notes, scheduling. There's probably 5 to 6 hours just in prep and execution, and then probably another hour in editing. So you're talking about 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a week on a side thing that's a hobby. And so that's why most podcasts end after 7 episodes. Statistically, they all die at 7 because it's a lot of work. And so we've been working very hard at this for a number of years. From an Agilist perspective, this has been a 15-year journey where I feel like finally after 15 years, I'm starting to understand what I'm doing, but I still don't feel like I'm there. From a blogging perspective, I've been a writer since I was 10 years old, published in various things since a very young age. But it's taken me the better part of 25 years to feel confident as a writer. So people say, oh, you have downloads. I started with no downloads. I started with no readers, and it's been basically, depending on how you want to measure it, 20 years of getting to where I'm at today.
So you have a podcast and you have a blog, and do you have any other? I know
Yes.
No Estimates thing is that I've seen your speaking, so other than those 3 mechanisms.
The speaking was interesting too. So that's been a 3 or 4 year journey where Diane Zajac convinced me to submit a talk. So I'm very critical, maybe I'm sharing too much, but my critic is a jerk. He's a very horrible person in my mind. I haven't named him yet. Maybe I should. But
We should have a naming ceremony.
We should. But I have a very harsh critic in my mind. And so I'm not always willing to go out there. I wasn't willing to do that. And it took a lot of coaching from Diane to basically say, hey, you're a good presenter. You have interesting angles on things. Let's go talk. And let's put something together. And so she really drug that out of me. And she basically said, get up on a stage and talk. So she helped me get my first gig as a speaker. And then I went everywhere I could. So I went to the Fort Wayne Community School System for free on my lunch break one day while I was working in Fort Wayne and said, hey, do you guys want to learn something about Agile? And I gave a talk to them. Anyone who would let me talk for 45 minutes, I went to. It did. And I was probably tens of thousands of dollars out of pocket, the first couple years. So it was an investment in myself. And then finally, this year has been amazing. So normally I would submit to 10 conferences, 2 or 3 would pick me up. So I would go to 2 or 3 conferences, speak at them a year, spend a few $1,000s out of my pocket to have that opportunity. This is the first year where I submitted to 10 and I got accepted. But this has been the year where, and again, it's after many, many, many years of working on, I've paid for public speaking coaching. I've paid for these things so that I can be better at presenting. And I still have a long way to go, especially when I watch some of the YouTube videos that they post. It's like, oh, this was bad. But there's that critic again. But it's just been a very long process and a lot of investment in myself. And this has been the year where some of that's starting to take shape. So people see this year and they're like, oh, wow, how did you do it? And I'm like, I don't know. It's been almost 25 years of, in some cases, preparing for this. So
overnight success takes 10 years to do.
Absolutely.
There's no shortcuts.
No. So does that help?
Patience, it sounds like.
Yeah. And I've had great mentors, friends, and help. So I wouldn't be speaking at conferences today without Diane Zajac. I wouldn't be writing books and that today without my parents, who were very instrumental in having an interest in a writing habit and making sure that I did that. Would not have a podcast today without Don Gray, Joe, Esther, Faye, who else has been on? But there's been a number of people that have just kept that going. There are weeks where I don't want to do it, but then I get a ping from Joe, and we're going to talk about the responsibility process, a topic we love, and we had a great show, and that brought a lot of people to that process. It improves lives, and so that's been great. The other part of it, it's also very humbling. So when you go to a conference, someone will say, "Hey, I listened to your show, and it changed the way I coach my team." And you just hear that, and you're like, I don't even know how to respond to that.
Right.
I'm not prepared for that yet, right? But yeah, maybe I'll stop there. I'll quit rambling. But does that help?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
Hey everybody, Ryan Ripley here. Just wanted to take a quick break to bring you a message about Agile Dev East, a great conference coming up in Orlando, November 5th through the 10th. I'll be there speaking every day of the conference. Looking forward to seeing as many of you there as possible. Here's that message, and then we'll get back to the Agile Coaching Summit proceedings from earlier this year. Agile Dev East is covering the latest Agile methods, technologies, tools, and leadership principles in Orlando, Florida, November 5th through the 10th. Choose from over 100 learning opportunities to learn from industry leaders, find solutions to your challenges, network with industry peers, develop and strengthen skills, supercharge knowledge, and re-energize career growth. Explore topics including Agile and Lean development principles and practices, scaled Agile development, Agile teams and leadership, mature Agile teams, personal development, and more. Agile for Humans listeners, use the code AgileDev to receive up to $200 off any registration package over $800. Visit well.tc/Agile for more information.
Yeah.
Hey, Ryan wondered.
You gotta say your name.
Sorry, Dave Sabo.
Hey, Dave.
I'd love to hear your story and other stories about what I see in the Agile community a lot is people very willing to help others, to mentor others, even big names like you mentioned. So I'd love to hear your story on how you connected with those people and everyone else, how they found mentors or how they connected with people and how they helped, because I think that's a big part of the Agile community.
So I'll put their phone numbers in the show notes.
Awesome.
John, you're welcome.
There's some really upset people right now. I asked, right? So I went to a coach camp in Indianapolis. It was at 2015? 14. And Don and Esther and I think Diana Larson were sitting at a table. And then for some reason I was motivated to just sit down and say hi. And no one looked at my name tag. They didn't see if they should be talking to me. They just started talking to me. And it was a really inspiring experience. So I try to model that behavior. I don't look at name tags, I just say hi. But it's a very inviting community. Julie and we've met today, or yesterday, and we're already talking about Scrum.org stuff, right? And she's already offered, hey, if you ever need help, just call me. It's like, well, we just met, but we're already feel like we're kindred spirits and bonded friends, and it's wonderful. Bex, we've seen each other at conferences. I always get a big hug. I mean, it's just everyone here. It's a cherished relationship, a lot of friends, and that's how the community works, right? I mean, all I did was ask, and people were very, very gracious to spend time with me, and they continue to do that. Does anyone else have Julie?
Julie Bellamo, yes, and I think that the Agile community as a whole lives in the era of abundance, that there's enough work for everybody, that we live in the world of possibilities, and when I get down on myself, that's why I come to my community to get my verve back, because I can't do it by myself. And that's what I've witnessed here, and in your podcast, I love the air of inclusion, the air of curiosity, the air of knowledge sharing, and I think that embodies everything that we try to do when we come together. Cool. Yes, and.
Thank you.
Hey, Ryan.
Hey, David.
I'm David. And I don't have a blog or a Twitter because I favor face-to-face and interactions. So this is where I want to go with my question. You're doing Agile for Humans. In your experience and in your past broadcast, what have you seen where we forget we're working with humans and we're obsessed with Agile?
So I think sometimes we get in a rat's nest type of discussion, especially around frameworks and methodologies and purity tests, right? So we start talking about my Agile is better than your Agile kind of discussions.
Yes.
And we start talking about failure modes, and we forget that people don't fail the systems they're into, or the systems that are impacting them fail. And I think that can be a struggle, because it's very easy to fall into that conversation of the negative or of the failures or all those things. So I think that's probably an area where we've kind of slipped away from that human element. What's nice though is that there's usually someone on the show that pulls it right back, and it's not always me. Right? I'm very good at falling into those self-deprecating, those defeatist cycles. Like I fall out of responsibility very easily. Right, to use the Christopher Avery terminology. I fall below that line quickly. I'm getting better at catching that and getting us back up to a positive space of responsibility and power. And I think, the root of your question and why it's important to me is that when we're acting out in that type of conversation, we lose all of our power. It's management's fault. It's someone else's fault. Someone is doing things to us. And we lose thread of the fact that we are powerful. And when we are acting out of responsibility, we are powerful people. And so that for me is where we go with it. It's just we slip under that line, but what's great about this community in general, we're very good at getting back above it. Hey, Ray.
Ray Obadowski. If I were the CEO of a company and I approached you or the community and I said, hey, I've heard great things about Agile, or what is Agile, I'm really excited about it, and I just point blank asked you, what can it do for me? What would you say?
So what can Agile do, what's the elevator pitch to a CEO?
Exactly.
So I've thought a lot about this, especially this past week with my time at scrum.org, and I've visiting them and getting to really get immersed in a lot of the framework side of things. I think what's in it for the CEO is that we are enabling small decisions frequently, right? So we are making small bets, small decisions, and we are enabling the delivery of value sooner, right? And we're giving this CEO, we're giving her options. So now you have this new increment of valuable, releasable software. What do you want to do next? Does it still make sense according to the market to continue? Does it make sense from an internal perspective to continue? Or is there something more valuable we can shift to now because we've delivered enough? I think it's the empowerment aspect, especially from the Scrum framework, which is my current deep dive focus. It's just that empowerment to make these decisions sooner. So it's that shorter feedback loop and just having more knowledge in place. That's that validated learning and then that delivery of value, I think, are the two things that I would really center on.
Good answer.
Thanks.
Validated learning, that's good.
Good answer. Did I pass the PSN? Did I get it? Got it. Hi.
Hi, I'm Guy Krishna. My question to you is, obviously to be a coach, somewhere along your journey, you have to do a lot of introspection.
Yeah.
So how do you think it has changed you as a human being in your personal life?
Yeah, so how has coaching... Merman, keep it down! So how is coaching...
Merman's voice has changed.
Edit.
So how has coaching changed me as a human being? So it's forced me to take... So first of all, the title of coach, introspection has led me to question that about myself, right? So I don't necessarily believe anymore that I'm an Agile coach. I'm actually starting to believe that I'm a very proud Scrum Master. And I'm actually probably going to take Agile Coach off of my LinkedIn profile when I get home tonight, because I just want to be a Scrum Master. I believe in that framework, and I don't need to be anything bigger than that. And so that's been a recent introspective kind of thing for me. The other thing there, it's forced me to take a very hard look at myself, because I believe the only way to improve as a Scrum Master, or if you are an Agile coach, is to improve yourself first. I can't fix people, right? And that was a lesson that I kept running my head into the wall on for many, many years, And I think my wife would agree that she's had that. She can't fix me, right? And it took those kind of really deep conversations between us. So my wife has actually changed me as well, where between Agile and the thinking and having to be introspective and having a great spouse and support, I think all of that's come together to make me want to be a better person. And so it starts with that, and just the acknowledgement that I wasn't a great person in my 20s. The people who knew me then would say, no, this is a totally new Ryan. But I think a lot of it has come to, I needed to learn responsibility, right? So I really am grateful to Christopher Avery and his work, because I needed to improve myself. I was in some very bad cycles of thinking where I was defeating myself over and over and over. I was acting out of obligation. I live very well and comfortably in obligation. I have to do these things. I have to be there. I have to do this. I have to respond like that. And breaking that cycle, and Agile helped me do that, because I have to inspect and adapt that constantly. And I have to have the mindset of curiosity and not judgment. Part of it is not judging myself. It's I'm a human being and this is a normal thing. But I think from that aspect, it's kind of given me the introspective skills to improve myself, to seek improvement. It's brought me to people like Joe, who's been a great friend and mentor on responsibility. It's brought me to people like Julie just yesterday. It's great friends all around me. But this is what Agile has done, and because I have this great community of people around me, I want to be a better person. And so it's really driving that force too. So don't know if I answered it. I kind of rambled, but okay.
And it's not easy.
And it's not easy. I'm constantly, exactly. But it's made all of my relationships better. So my marriage is better. My friendships are deeper and more meaningful. And I think Agile is a large part of that.
It's Mike Vitale. Want to know what the one piece of advice you could give to a new Scrum Master would be?
So the piece of advice to a new Scrum Master, so let's say they just finished their 2-day Scrum.org course, would be to go back and really think about professionalism and really think about a full-bodied, vibrant practice of Scrum, right? So it's very easy to go through all of the Scrum events and just check the box and have this mechanical, hey, we did our daily Scrum, we're a Scrum team. And the answer is no. There are Scrum values that Scrum Masters model. So they are the embodiment of this life force into the framework, right? And then professionalism. From a professional standpoint, are we delivering quality? And if we're sacrificing quality, be the voice that turns that ship around, because it's just a sabotage type thing where if we're not acting in a professional way, if we're not embodying professionalism, I think we're missing the whole point of the framework. So the bonus tip would be to get Christopher Avery's book. I know I'm not selling it. I'm not making cash.
But now say the name of it.
It's a responsibility process. It's that book has changed the way I view being a Scrum Master. It is an embodiment of servant leadership, but it's also forcing me to be a better person first, and to work to always act powerfully out of responsibility, and not getting stuck in these like lay blame, obligation, justification patterns that can just sabotage your teams. Hey, Joe.
Joe Stolfi. So can I add one thing about the advice to Scrum Master? Everything Ryan said, and to help embody that. And someone else said this, I don't remember who it was, but you need to be willing and know that you can lose your job at any time.
Yep.
You need to have that much belief in your team and what you're doing that you need to put yourself out there, because Ryan said it, you need to be the voice. Right? You need to bring that to the organization because nobody else is going to.
Because that is protecting the team from the system that they exist in sometimes.
Well, look, if we are true servant leaders, Robert Greenleaf set the bar pretty high.
Yeah.
It means that we are serving the highest priority needs of others above our own. I mean, that's difficult. And sometimes that will mean your job is at risk, right? I care about my teams enough that I am willing to risk the way that I feed my family because it is the right thing to do. That is very difficult, right? But it's something that I've done.
To add on that, like Coach says, if you're not on the verge of getting fired, you're not doing enough.
Now, to counterbalance that, because I won't pay your mortgage if you get bold and do something crazy, Ken Schwaber also says a dead Scrum Master is a useless one. So pick your spots, right? Who else? James Black. I am so happy you're going to be on the show.
Thank you, Ryan.
Make it good.
No pressure. So I have a question for you
Yes,
and anybody else who wants to speak up. What is the one thing you learned from either putting on this conference or from the different sessions you attended that you're going to take away and go either learn more or do something different in the future?
So Ben and I were talking about this last night at dinner. We have great friends, and that was a big takeaway. Like, we were worried initially when we put this conference together that no one would show up. And a few of our friends thought, you guys are nuts. Like, why the hell wouldn't we be here? You know? And we got Merman in from Texas. You know, Bex and Julie are in from Florida after going through a horrific series of weeks with the hurricanes. But they still came up here, and they've been doing brilliant stuff up here. You know, Mike over here had his foot cut off, and he's walking around in a boot, still supporting. I mean, the enthusiasm that Mark Byro here has shown has just been inspiring. You know, Joe's come around from Ohio. We've got former colleagues from past jobs who showed up to be supportive. I mean, it's just that has been a big takeaway from this conference is just the huge support that we have in this community.
The bell tolls.
Yeah,
The bell tolls. So the bell means we're running out of time. Anything last minute that anyone wants to get in before we call it a wrap?
I think we're just really grateful. I'm really grateful for you doing this.
Yeah.
It's been great.
Ray Obadowski, to the takeaway of something I've learned so far in 2 days, people come before process. It's new for me.
Good.
Welcome.
Welcome. All right. Thanks, everybody. This was fun.
Thanks for listening to Agile for Humans. Let's keep the conversation going. Drop us a question on Twitter @AgileForHumans or visit agileforhumans.com.